guys, it's Emily here, also known as Aussie Debt Free Girl here on the internet. I just want to say thank you for all my new followers and subscribers. There have been a couple of articles and podcasts that have come out about me in the last week that have sort of blown everything up. But because some of those articles actually never spoke to me, they just took bits from other articles and took bits from my Instagram and made some assumptions. There have been some facts that have been lost or muddied along the way and of causing some confusion. So I thought I would pop on and I would tell you my story in my words, and I would clear up any of those issues along the way. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you like this kind of content. I do put out videos every week on saving money, frugal living, frugal food, family life, all those kinds of things. So stay tuned for that. All right, so this is a long and a bit of a hard story from me, but I'm going to give you the shortened version of it all. Basically, when I was 21, I was in a relationship with somebody and we found out that we were pregnant. We'd been in a relationship for nearly 5 years at that point, and I was meant to be infertile and unable to have children, and this was a bit of an oopsie. But basically, once he found out we were pregnant, our lease was up, so he decided that we were going to both move into friends' places while we found a new lease together. And then once we'd moved out, he no longer wanted to be in the relationship. So I found myself pregnant and homeless, and it was scary. Over that pregnancy, I did a lot of couch surfing and staying with friends. I stayed with a family member on and off when I could. She lived very rural, and I had to get to hospital appointments and prenatal and all of those sorts of things. And I was trying to find a house and get my life set up for when the baby came. During that time, because I was homeless, I was no longer able to work. So I was on New Start trying to save for all the things for a baby, save 2 weeks in advance and a bond and all of those things. In the end, I ended up in an emergency women's shelter, so a homeless shelter for expectant mums or mums with babies. And I was only there for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then I got a housing commission house. So I was actually able to move into that housing commission house at 39 weeks pregnant, and then try and get everything ready for a baby then. So that's kind of where I was at. I was a single mum for 2 years, living in a housing commission house, living frugally and saving everything I could. I managed to save a good amount while doing this, and walking places and just making a dollar stretch. So I've always been really frugal. I didn't want to be in debt, so I wasn't in debt. I was debt free, had a little bit of savings, but I was on Centrelink and in a housing commission house. Fast forward 2 years, I met my partner, my now fiance, and we hit it off, had a whirlwind romance, and a few months later after we met, he moved in with me, and a few months after that, we found out we were expecting our first child together. Again, bit of a surprise because of my fertility issues, but we were both very, very happy. And yeah, we sat down and decided we would have a chat about what we both wanted. We talked about it before, but about what we both wanted our lives to be like, and start working towards that, because I've always been quite financially focused, and he knew that. I then, several months pregnant, found out that he had about $45,000 in debt that I didn't know about, and that we would never be able to have those things like buy a house of our own, move to a bigger place, get a nicer vehicle, or buy a vehicle. At that point we didn't have one, while trying to tote around all of this debt. So after a chat, I decided that I would pay it all off. We would pay it all off and we would start fresh. So I made a list of all of the debts. I went through, with his permission, went through his email, found every debt agency. I typed in debt, I typed in owed, I typed in all of those sort of keywords to pull up as many of them as possible, and made a list. And then I found out the fees and the interest rates on all of those debts, and I made a list from smallest to biggest because we had such a limited income. It was going to be all about paying those small ones off and building and snowballing it out. And when I say we had a very limited income, I mean, I was on partnered parenting at that point because he had moved in, and I got a small amount from family tax benefit, and he worked as a part-time casual employee at Subway. So really, really small income. I think mine was about $14,000–15,000 a year, and he hadn't been at Subway very long, so we only made about maybe $5,000 that year from Subway, and another casual job that he had when Subway was no longer working. So we made about $20,000 that first year, and we did have very, very low expenses. I kept our food budget incredibly low. We walked or took public transport everywhere, and yeah, we just kept everything really, really low. And we had Netflix, we had power, we had everything we needed. Obviously, then we started to try and increase income, and he went through several jobs looking for one. It's hard to find a job. If you're doing casual or part-time, it was a hard sort of period to find a job where we lived it was around 2015, 2016. And then eventually we found a better job for him. At the same time, I was side hustling, doing what we could. And now we're in 2021, and last year he made $50,000, I believe, from his full-time employment. And the year before that, it was about 35, so forth. So we've been building. I also still receive a small amount from parenting payment because of our earnings, and I receive a small amount of family tax benefit for the 2 kids. And this year, I think we will hit right around $60,000 in taxable income, and yeah, that's sort of where we're at. He brings home roughly between $700 and $800, depending on overtime, a week. So I budget for about $750, and I receive about $300 a fortnight from Centrelink, and then I side hustle the rest and do what we can. So back to our debts. I negotiated, I paid them off, I knocked them down. The first few were, I think the smallest one we had was about $250. So that was the first one gone, and then there was $1,000, $3,000, and it went all the way up to a $15,000 personal loan for a motorbike that by the time we'd got to it was actually about to fall off the credit rating and all of that at the time. So we've done that. During that time, that $45,000 actually grew to $60,000. We were knocking off debts, but we needed to get a reliable car to get him to and from this new job. We'd bought a $600 car, paid rego, paid repairs, done all of that, and then it died. And so we ended up in a place where he had to miss work on a Monday, and if he'd missed work on a Tuesday, he would lose this really good job he'd found. And we were in a position, because his credit rating was sort of so messed up from all of those debts and unpaid debts that we were now cleaning up, but it takes time, that I had to get a car loan. So I took out a car loan for a reasonable car, but with all of the fees, and because my only income as a stay-at-home mother of 2 was Centrelink, I had to get a car with an interest rate of 25%. Ridiculous. That was the good credit interest rate. The bad credit interest rate was 35%. But over that time, we paid off about $14,000 and $800 and something on the car was how much we ended up paying for it. It was an $8,500 car, but with all the fees and the interest, that's what we ended up paying it off. I got a 3-year car loan and I paid it off in 15 months. We became debt-free the very start of March 2020, right before the pandemic hit. Super duper grateful that I managed to pay all that off then and not go into that sort of really turbulent time with debt as well. So yeah, that's when we became debt free. That was last year. In the last year, we saved up a $5,000 emergency fund and $10,000 for a house deposit. That $5,000 emergency fund is now gone. My son did get sick and we did have to pay for hospital parking and specialist appointments and time off work and care for my other daughter while I was staying in hospital with him. So that ate through that emergency fund. And then we had a couple of emergencies that outside of that we've had to eat into our house deposit for. So right now we have $5,000 roughly sitting in my house deposit. It's a little bit more than that, but $5,000 sitting in our house deposit fund. And that will actually be going to a new car because that car that I bought and paid off is now on its last legs. But that's sort of the background and our debt payoff story. Now I wanted to cover a few misconceptions. My fiance is not the father of my son. My son is 7 and my daughter is 4, and my fiance and I met 5.5 years ago. So we do have a blended family. He does see his dad, and yeah, I don't receive any child support or anything like that, but that's our family situation. My son does not have epilepsy. It's not epilepsy. He does have a rare neurological disorder. We do have a diagnosis. I'm not comfortable talking about it because it is rare and it'd be quite identifying and people would be able to find me for that. But he does have a diagnosis. He does require some specialist appointments and things like that, but now we're not doing hospital trips and paying for parking and all of that. That's all calmed down, so we're rebuilding everything at the moment. We did not access our super. One of the common questions or misconceptions we got was that being able to each pull out $20,000 of super last year must have really helped in paying off that debt. But I actually don't have any super at all. When I became a single mum, the fees and the interest was eating away at my super that I had, the super balance that I had, and eventually it fell below the minimum, and then the ATO just sent me a check for $70, which was what was left in my account. They've since changed the laws on that companies aren't allowed to keep charging you that and eat away at your balance, but unfortunately that happened to me before those laws were changed, so I don't actually have any super, $0. And my partner was working, had trouble finding a job and was working casual part-time employment, so he doesn't have a lot of super, and we've never withdrawn super. We actually, once we paid off all of that debt, one of the first things I did was, because we were no longer going to be making all of these payments on debt and we wouldn't miss the money, is we increased his super contribution from the employer 9.5%. We increased it by 5.5% out of our take-home salary sacrifice to bring it up to 15% to retirement, and that works out to be, we lose about $40 before taxes a week to fill his super. But no, we've not touched his super. We've not touched my super because I don't have any, so no super was withdrawn. And anything that you hear from me or see on any of my channels, I try to make it very clear that I don't give financial advice. I'm not a financial counselor. If you want financial advice, then please contact somebody and to talk about your specific personal situation. I talk about what I've done and what I'm doing and what works for me, and it may not all work for you. Personal finance is just that, it's personal, and you need to work out what's going to work for you and your family. I do post about my goals, I do talk about what I want to do, and I post when we fail. might set a goal that I want to save $1,000 and then something comes up and we don't do it. I'm not going to lie and say, woo, we did it, or just not talk about it. I'm going to say, hey, something came up, because that's life. So if you want to see more content from me, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you have other questions or other misconceptions that you want answered, just pop them in the comments below and I'll get back to you, or I'll make another Q&A video. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys